Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Your host, Hal Blood, sitting here with my co-host, Good Lee Shands.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, so anyways, today we're gonna talk about, we've had a couple of requests over the last little bit of time here, messages about woods trucks. I think we've done a little bit, some short clips on people's woods trucks for the big woods, but we're going to talk a little bit about either setting a truck up or both setting a truck up and things to carry when you're on your deer hunting trip or traveling the big woods in general on the logging roads. Most people aren't familiar with driving on the logging roads because that's, all the northern Maine, that's what it is. There is no paved roads. It's logging roads, and they're maintained by the landowners, and we're fortunate to be able to use those. And but there's some things that go along with it for the use of the roads. You got to be prepared to use all gravel roads, and there's rules of the road as well. So anyway, we'll talk about that, and we'll start off with, before you can travel them roads, you got to have your truck set up. So we'll go on with that, and I think I did a short clip with the Ram Charger just showing it, but everybody doesn't, to travel those roads, you don't really need a big setup with a lift kit. You don't need that kind of stuff, but that's what you need if you need to get off of them roads or go get a moose out or get back in places that most people won't go.
I think the best place to start is, we touched on a little bit, and some people will tell you that you don't need them. I've been traveling those roads for years and I don't have 10 plies. But when I started guiding moose hunters and deer hunters north of the Golden Road, once you get up really northern Maine, it's a lot of shale roads. And
Right.
The first thing that I decided was, I'm running a business. People are, they're dependent on me to not be broke down or whatever. But 10-ply tires, they're not that much more money. But if you're out on them roads, you ought to have some 10-ply tires. It's worth a little bit extra money.
Yeah, they hold up better in it. And you mentioned the shale because, it seems like about half the roads are gravel and half are made out of shale. They just scrape that shale out of, because northern Maine is all black shale, almost to the surface, and they just grub it out with an excavator and put it down on the roads, and it's sharp. That shale is sharp until it gets packed down. So, 10-ply tires it's pretty much a must, Here's a few words from our sponsors. They're all top-notch people. We're glad to have them aboard. Make sure you support them. That's what keeps us going. Being the low-tech guy I am, there's one thing I've learned to embrace with technology, and it's my Onyx. I used to carry maps and GPS when it finally came out and stuff, but the Onyx has eliminated that because I've got my GPS in my phone now with my Onyx app. I can mark everything in that. It's helpful that I can show other people by putting a pin in if I want to send somebody to a place. Being a guide, that's important, I can give them the pin, put it in there, I text it to them, whatever. So if you want to get your Onyx, get your Big Woods Bucks code, BWB, and get you 20% off, but I highly recommend it. Give you a little update. Skinner Sights. We all know they're the best site going, but it's a great company because Andy and the crew there are innovative, and they're always thinking up either new models to make a site for, improve the sites, making mounts for scopes, and now they've come on with their own line of scopes and red dots. Whatever Andy does in the company, it's top-notch, first quality, and they stand behind everything, and we're glad to have them as a partner, and we hope you'll try their sites, and you can trust your life with those, and they're going to get you the game. So get your Skinner sights, and you can trust me that you're going to be glad you did. Just wanted to talk a little bit about minus 33 in the wool they have, which I believe is best wool going. Whether it's base layers or your socks or whatever you're wearing, you got to have wool. I've been stressing that for people for years, to wear your wool, whether it's the outerwear or even your base layers and socks. I've been to the tour of the plant, see how they make their socks, and it's quality, the fit is right, and they're going to be long lasting. I've got socks I've had now for several years, and they look like I'll have them for several years more before they even think about wearing out. So I trust my life to wool, and you can too. Minus 33. All right, back to the podcast. The other thing to look out for, traveling on them would be if it's freshly graded, is when
Dangerous.
they grade either gravel, but shale is the worst, because when they grade that, it's all been packed nice and smooth like cement, and then they grade it and they're cutting that shale off again and turning it up, and then they rake it out. But when that's first graded, that's like driving your truck down on a broken glass, really. It's all sharp and standing up. Now it'll crumble and stuff, but when you hit a newly graded road, slow down. Don't be driving. I mean, you might have been on a road you could drive along. Some of the good big open roads, you can travel along 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, whatever. But if you see where the grade has just been and that's all turned up or raked up, cut her back to about 20, because the faster you turn them tires in that stuff, the better chance you're going to get a tire cut with that shale. Or even in the gravel, you'll notice if there's a lot of stone in the gravel when they're grading, those graders will cut stones like right in half, and where they cut them, that's like, razor sharp too. So yeah, have good tires. Don't drive too fast. And the other thing is, we were talking about, drive where it's already packed down. And most of the roads, you've got several types of roads. You've got the main 2-lane roads where, you can pass a vehicle easy enough, like a highway. And then you've got the ones that are narrower, where if you can go by somebody, but you don't want to be flying by. So most people are traveling kind of somewheres in the middle 2/3 of the road, and that's where it gets packed down. Don't drive like you're out on a main paved road and keep to your side of the road, because all of the loose stuff that gets shuffled over as the roads get packed from driving on it, all the loose stuff goes to the sides, and that's where all the sharp, oddball things, pieces of metal, all of that gets like shuffled over into that loose side, and you're going to cut tires in that or blow sidewalls out or something. So try to drive in the most packed part of it until you see somebody coming, then slow down and move over. You're going to have to get in that, slow down when you pass people. And then you're going to have to then some of the roads are just a 1-lane road anyways, and it'd be obvious where the tire tracks are, and half of them got grass growing up on both sides, and then in the middle. And on topic, for surely, if you see their private roads, they're logging, if you see a log truck coming, move over. Just pull over and stop, because he's probably going as fast as he can go with that load of logs to get to the mill. And if it's in the dry weather, all you're going to see coming is a cloud of dust. When he goes by, you won't be able to see for, a couple of minutes. So pull over and stop, let him go by, continue on. That's kind of the rules of the road. And if everybody kind of uses their head and respects that stuff, there won't be any problems with the landowners. But yeah, so anyways, good tires. We started from there. What else?
Well, I always like to, sometimes when we're guiding in those places, it might be a long ways in between meeting other vehicles, and I can touch on some stuff and you can, but two of the things that I always make sure that I have with me is some chains, because you might need to get pulled out of a wet spot, or you might need to pull somebody else out. So I always have a couple of chains in there with me.
You
And
mean pulling chains, not
pulling chains, yep.
because I was going to say we're going to need, for some trucks, we're going to recommend tire chains.
Tire
So
chains. I'll let you touch on that one later. But when I'm talking about chains, I am talking about pulling chains. I usually have a really heavy short one, and then I've got a longer one that's not quite as heavy. Those are the two chains I've had my whole guiding life. Never snapped them, never broke them. Pulled out lots of vehicles, been pulled out myself, and so I like to have some chains. And then the other thing is, and again, I've used it on multiple occasions, is I keep jumper cables underneath the rear seat, because invariably you're either going to run into somebody that needs a boost, or I've had a client one time that said, "Oh, I got to go back to your truck," and he'll remain nameless, but I got to go back to your truck and get some stuff out I've forgotten. Somehow we ended up, now your vehicles, the lights go off by themselves usually, but we went out and hunted all day, come back to a dead battery because he'd left the lights on. And so, it's booster cables are pretty handy.
In most vehicles now, you're going to have an automatic transmission. The old days, everything was a standard transmission, and you could push it or pull it and get it going, but not anymore. You got to have some juice to get them going now. Some of them won't even start without enough juice to run them computers in them, So, jumper cables, and a lot of people carry the battery packs. It's already juiced up. So if you buy yourself, it's that's pretty handy. I have a heavy chain in my Ram Charger. I carry that. I've got in the back of my Ram Charger, I've got a milk crate it's like my accessories thing. In the bottom of it, I keep the tire chain. And I've got a chain come along I keep in there, mostly for pulling moose up in the back, but it's good for other things. The chain come along. I carry some extra oil for the engine, a quart of oil. I carry gear oil, brake fluid, and power steering fluid. I carry a little bit of all of that in there because breaking a brake line ain't that uncommon up in the woods. You get a brake line hooked you're going in the bushes or alders, or you hit a stump, break a brake line. And
having said that, one of the things, like, some people are like, "Well, I'm not a mechanic, I couldn't fix that." Well, with a brake line, all you really got to do is, if you got some extra brake fluid, wherever it's broke, if you just got a pair of pliers, if you pinch that, bend it over and pinch it off in a pinch, you can work with your other brakes, the ones you got left, and just put some more fluid in it, and you're going to be good to go.
Yeah. I've done a lot of that with bear baiting before, and them old
brake lines.
And them old Toyota trucks they were rusty. The old ones would be solid rust underneath, and you'd always have a brake line going. But I used to take the axe and pound them against the axle, fold them over with the pliers, pound them again, and you had like a double crimp in it.
Get you by.
Brake fluid in and go. Yeah. Yeah, we got a Woods Improvise.
I do the same thing. It's a small tote I keep, especially if we're on the moose hunt and you're up in a place where you're a long ways from civilization. I got a milk crate that I got all my stuff in, or a small tote. And same thing, just the bare essentials, and it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah. I also, in that crate, I carry a small bottle jack. It's like a 6-ton bottle jack, hydraulic jack. Because sometimes if you get mired in the mud, sometimes you got to work in sections, The other jack is good to carry as a high lift. I think you probably carry a high lift jack. But sometimes you're in a situation you can't get that jack on anything to get you up, If you're in the mud, I've tried to get mine out before, and with a high lift, I buried my power wagon once right in a solid muck in the spring, clay mud, and the more I'd jack it, the jack would go into the ground. I had to keep finding stones to put in there and to get it up. But probably sometimes in the mud, you get in that soupy stuff, there's no bottom to it. So, but a high lift jack it'll get you out of a lot of stuff. You can actually use it kind of like a come along too. It's kind of a pain, but you can actually use it for that. But good 4-foot high lift jack will, if you're in muck and stuff and you can get under the bumper or something, you can get it up enough to get, some wood or stones or something under the wheel to set it back down on. Winch. Everybody doesn't need a winch, a winch just controls how bad of a road you're going to go on, right?
I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I actually got it. You found out it was somebody here in town. I got it to pull moose out because back in the day, we used to get our moose close enough to the road. A lot of times you could pull them out with a winch. So I got a 12,000 pound winch from somebody up here that you got for me. The thing that I really liked about that though, it slid into my Reese hitch on the back of my truck. And a couple of times, usually if you're going to get stuck, it's because you drove into something.
Right.
If it's in your back, you can pull yourself back out. A 12,000 pound winch, especially, once I get stuck, instead of just jumping right onto it and see if I can get out of it, if I know that I just stop, get out, check the situation out. But I've had more than once, I've hooked that 12,000 pound winch in the back and hooked into something behind me and been able to pull myself back out. It's pretty handy.
Yeah. I try to go forward all the time.
I know you do. We'll talk about that probably sometime later when we start talking about our famous roads. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing I was going to say is when we talked about the chains, I carry at least one snatchy strap, the straps, because they don't weigh anything and you can roll them up in a smaller space. But those are easy to carry too. They usually got a loop built into each end. And you always want to have a couple of clevises on them, the end of them. So you can hook them to different things, because if you just got a strap, you got to have something. If you don't have a tow hook or a hitch ball or something, but you can hook them up with a clevis pin there and hook two together, or whatever you got to do. And then I've got this rope. It's a rope that the linemen pull the wires up with. It's like a Kevlar rope. It doesn't stretch at all. It's like a cable, really. Yeah. And it's got a loop made in each end. And I think that's 50 feet long. So I got a winch on the Ram Charger and got a winch on the Power Wagon, but I usually carry that more in case I've got to pull somebody else out and they're down somewhere, and sometimes you got to pull them out from behind or whatever. But I just carry it. I throw it in the back there, and it's easy to carry stuff in the Ram Charger because it's undercover anyway. I understand in a pickup if you don't have a tonneau, but you can get one of them big, heavy tote boxes to carry all your stuff in there.
All of my guides, that's what we usually do, is we've all got a tote in the back of our truck with all that kind of gear in it. Like you said, that it's kind of important that it doesn't get wet, because stuff don't work when it gets rusty, and then you just don't, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on any of this stuff. Like, I'm sure those chains that I've had forever, I'm sure my father picked them up at a yard sale for next to nothing, but knew that I needed them. So don't think you got to spend a lot of money on this stuff, but the stuff that we're talking about it's important, and it'll save you a long walk.
Yeah, I mean, even those straps, them nylon straps, you can buy a 20-footer for $30 or something. It's cheap enough. And the one thing about those is like with a chain, you got to just pull. You can't snap anything. But if you get one of them one of them straps, they've got enough give to them. They're designed, I think they call them like a snatchy strap or something, because you can go with them in the momentum of your vehicle. It'll almost be like a slingshot. It'll stretch enough, and then when the weight comes to, it'll yank something out with the momentum, so you're not just using your tires to get out too. So it's another thing to think about there. A lot of people worry about, if they got an open bed in their pickup or something, they think, well, what if somebody steals it? But I'll tell you, I've left stuff in the back of my truck over all the years, and I've never had anything stolen out of the back of my truck. I think mainly when you're up, especially in the North Maine woods here. I wouldn't say you wouldn't in some places, but most people understand that's stuff you may need, and they have respect enough not to steal things up here. So glad we still have a culture like that anywhere, somewhere. But
Yeah.
Hi, Hal here, host of the Big Woods Bucks podcast. We're excited to announce our partnership with the most respected and recognized land company in the Northeast, Christmas and Associates Land Company. Owners Dan and Mark Christmas are two upstate New York natives with deep roots in the Adirondacks and Tug Hill Plateau, as well as two of the most passionate big woods hunters you'll meet. Whether it's newly constructed camp surrounded by state wilderness or family getaway, their team of experienced land guides are the best at matching folks with the perfect land tract at an affordable price. They even provide financing. Christmas Land Guides will provide full land tours using ATVs, snowmobiles, and even snowshoes so that you can scout every acre. Christmas Land and Camp staff also help you construct the camp you've always dreamed of using our in-the-house master builders. For over 35 years, no one in New York State has provided more big buck properties and family hunting camps to hundreds of folks who love the woods than Christmas and Associates Land Company. Dan and Mark and the whole company remain dedicated to wise land conservation and treating everyone they meet like family. Always available 7 days per week unless there's fresh tracking snow. Call 800-229-7843 or visit Land and Camps on Facebook or go to landandcamps.com.
Especially like most of the time, like if I take somebody up shed hunting in the spring, I think to myself, a pretty good chance some trees came down in the wintertime. So I always put a chainsaw in there. And I mean, a chainsaw is what, $600-700 now probably for a good one if you get a husky or something. And so I keep one in the back of my truck, and I don't really worry about anybody stealing it. But that's another thing. If you're going to take a trip up in the northwoods, pretty good idea to have a chainsaw with you, because again, that'll save you a long walk out.
Oh yeah.
Especially if something comes down. We've been up there before, and had a windstorm come in behind you and have to cut your way back out.
Yeah. We seem to always get up north here sometime in late October, early November I think it's the weather changing over into fall. We get a big wind. It's almost like every year we get it like clockwork. You don't know when it's coming, but you're going to end up with one of them 50, 60 mile an hour winds that brings a lot of trees down and all of that. I remember one time we were up in zone 4 by Baker Lake, and we had 6 hunters moose hunting, and we had 5 of the moose by Wednesday, and we got them out of there and those clients, and Kev was the only one left. He had his client, and they went out and they ended up, a couple of the other guys helped him. They shot a bull the first thing in the morning, and I was coming back up to help and tear down camp, and a big wind come up during the day from the time they left camp. Went and they shot the moose. The wind come up like in the middle of the day, and it was like hurricane wind. Them big spruce trees along the St. Orly Road was coming right across the road. They had to cut their way back to camp. They got the moose, and they had to cut big spruce trees and stuff out of the road to get back to camp. I got up there, and when I had to go by camp, I didn't know they'd got it because I'd gone out with a moose the night before. I got back to camp, And at that time, I was using those dome tents. They were all in the woods. All the tents blew right out of the campsite, and they were all up out in the wood line there, you know, because they had bottoms in them and stuff, and everybody's sleeping bags and gear were inside of them. I mean, it was my cook arrangement was one of those pop-up things there. That was blown off in the woods. The poles were all bent. It was a mess. So, yeah, chainsaws are pretty handy. If nothing else, I always carry an axe, too. You got to have an axe in your truck, especially if you don't have a chainsaw, you know, because if there's a tree and you got an axe, it might take your little effort, but you can get it out of the way, enough to get around it. So always carry a good axe and make sure it's sharp. In a toolkit, you're up there, you're not going to call the garage and come get you and fix it. If you do, it's going to be about $1,000 wrecker bill. But yeah, you got to carry some tools to. It might be something around camp you need to fix or something or whatever. But
you know what I did, because I had a Craftsman toolbox back at the camps and had it full of nice tools. They might have been Snap-ons or SKs or whatever, but I built myself a little kit. You can go down there, and a lot of this stuff is not top rate, but now they make stuff, especially if you get like 1/2-inch drive and stuff, you got to torque them pretty bad to break anything. But you go down to Harbor Freight, just get yourself a plastic box and fill it with the bare essentials. For $100, you can build a toolkit that'll probably get you out of a bad situation. And I just keep it in the back of my truck all the time. And if it gets rusty or if it whatever, I don't really care. I ain't got a lot of money invested. But again, have something for a simple toolkit, pair of pliers, adjustable wrench, all that stuff.
Adjustable wrench, channel lock pliers, a few Phillips and a few regular screwdrivers, a set of wrenches and a set of, well, nowadays the vehicle's a half metric, so you better have a metric and a standard set of wrenches and a same thing with a socket set, you know.
Put them in a plastic box so it don't get rusty. And
I still got mine in an old ammo can.
There you go.
Yeah. They ain't very new. They've been around the world, but they're in there. And I always keep extra, like, in the bottom of it, I throw in, like, nuts and bolts of different various sizes. You never know when you're going to need something like that, you know. So carry a little bit of that stuff. And the other thing that we forgot about, we should have talked about you're talking about tires, is a plug patch kit.
Yep.
And a compressor. So a lot of times you'll get a poke a hole, and even up north, believe it or not, you can get a nail in your tire. Enough stuff falls off trailers or whatever. But if you just have either a small rock cut hole or a nail hole, one of those plug kits can get you out of the woods, or even save you sometimes from having to change. You can plug that without taking the tire off, you know, just roll the vehicle ahead to figure out where the hole is and plug it up and fill it back up with a compressor. The ones that we talked about, the portable charging station, you know, the battery pack, you can buy those that have a compressor in it too, you know. It's a battery pack and a compressor, and they usually got a light on them and maybe even a place to plug in a 12 volt or something, you know. So something like that's pretty handy too. But yeah, you got to be able to, you know, and if you're not, I know nowadays a lot of people aren't as mechanically inclined, you know, but if you know you're going to be spending a week or driving these roads and you listen to this and you got to have the stuff, at least go on you can go on to YouTube and find anything. Go on and figure out how to use the stuff, you know. I'm sure there's a lot of videos on how to use a high lift jack, how to use a patch plug kit, whatever it is. Figure out how to use the stuff before you need to use it, right? Because if it's raining or snowing and you're stuck or got a flat tire or something, and that's not the time to try to learn how to get out of your situation. So, you might want to carry, depending where you're going. I know when we go up north and stuff, a lot of times we'll carry some extra gas cans too, Not too many gas stations up there. And if you want to carry some water and some extra, I always got some snackies in the truck, Just lately, sometimes I leave stuff in there for the whole season. Come out, you're hungry and grab a snack or whatever, but
I think sometimes we take it for granted because we do it all the time. But there's people that, they might get a week's vacation that they're going to come up and hunt. And if they don't do it all the time, there's people that are listening to this podcast and they might be bored with this because they're like us. They spend enough time, they do all this, but we're really doing this for, again, people write in and they ask us this stuff. And if we can save anybody a night in the woods or a long walk out to get to somewhere, that's why we're covering this, and we just want to help people.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, I'd mentioned it, but we didn't talk about it, was especially in November. If you're coming up deer hunting in November in northern Maine, it's winter. You might as well say it's winter. It might not have set in yet, but it can set in any day. It can go from 40 degrees into winter in one day, and the snow can come, and we can get a lot of snow in November. So bring a set of tire chains, because especially in early snow that's damp, as soon as you drive down a road, it turns to ice. It slicks over into almost like ice and stuff. And if you don't have, depends what you're running for tires. If you're running just an all-season radial you better have at least that. Don't be trying to run summer tires, because you're surely going to get flats. But a set of tire chains will go a long way, because you can get traction in any kind of snow or ice with those. And you had a story about going in one time and a couple of years ago, remember, and it iced over while you were in there, and you had to drive in the edge to get out.
I didn't have my tire chains with me. Yeah, it was a storm that came in. I drove all the way in on the Holub Road. I was 20 miles in there, and there wasn't really a lot of snow, but the road, it was late in the season, and we call it white ice. It's snow that's been packed into, so, it's almost ice. Get all the way in there.
Didn't it turn to freezing rain?
Yeah, I got in there. I could hear it coming. It came down out of Canada because we get predominantly a northwest wind that time of year. I had just got out of my vehicle and I'm getting ready to hunt, and I could hear something coming. I'm like, what is that noise? And it was freezing rain coming down out of Canada. And when it was hitting all the trees and everything coming, next thing I know, it's hitting me, and it dawns on me. When that stuff hits that white ice on the road all the way. So I had just gotten all the way in there, and I hadn't brought my tire chains. I just, did it spur of the moment, and they weren't calling for any kind of weather, but it was freezing rain was what it was. I white knuckled it all the way back out. And the thing that always kills me, anybody that's ever been on the Holub Road will tell you, you're almost back to civilization and you got to cross a bridge and it's a hill going down to it and there's no guardrails. And
it's one lane. It's one lane.
One lane. When I went across that, I was just thinking, boy, I hope I don't go sideways across it.
You got to line up when you're at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And hang on. Yeah. Yeah. The thing about that too is when I get, because my Ram Charger, it's got great mud tires on it, and it'll go anywhere in the mud, and it's great in the snow, but it's no good on the ice. Yeah. When there's ice, even snow on the road, because it's got that positive rear end, I lock it in. I put it in 4-wheel drive going down the highway because it's useless on ice. So I'll when it's ice, the roads are iced over like that, I just pull over on the side, and I put the passenger side tires off the road into the grass, rough gravel or whatever it is, and then you got enough traction on one side to keep you from spinning around, because of that positive rear end. Once you start to slide one way if you don't let off quick
Pushes
enough
you.
on the gas, you're going to go right in the circle, push you right around the circle. So, yeah. Well, anyways,
We probably ought to talk about we just started on roads. We probably ought to, if we're going to have time in
yeah,
this podcast, we both got to get a couple of roads in. Why don't you
yeah,
start us off in some of your famous roads?
yeah. Well, the funny thing is about roads up here is I've been up here hunting for 40 something years, and some of the roads that were always called one name, they had a name to them. They end up, a forester comes along and decides he wants to name it something else, or put a number on it, and then it's a different road. And when they first started doing that around here, I'm like, people were telling me, yeah, I'm on the 200 road or whatever it is, and I'm like, I don't know anything about a 200 road, and I've been hunting here. And they tell me where it is, and I go, oh, that's the East Branch Road, because that's what it always was, you see. And then I actually name, and you probably do too, if it does, most roads don't have a name anyways, so we just end up naming them ourselves or something like that, you know. And and then somebody else might call it something, and so you keep calling it that or whatever. But one of the funny ones is, and I didn't name it, Lars named it, was the roller coaster road, and he used to talk about the roller coaster road, and I'm like, where's the roller coaster? What are you talking about? And it was just a road that, and it's a quite common. I mean, it could be in this area, there could be 10 roller coaster roads. It's where they take the culverts out. You know, when they get done logging, sometimes if they're not going to log there for a long time, they'll pull all the culverts and bridges back out, and then you got to go down through all of them, and sometimes they're quite close. I mean, there's some places I've seen them like every 50 to 100 yards. There's another culvert they took out. So I think going in and up and down like that, Lars said calling it the roller coaster road.
Yeah, we had one, I called it the Mogul Road, but the same thing over in Cocadjo area. I had one like that. We call it the Mogul Road because,
Yeah,
just up and down.
yeah, yeah. So that's how we learn how to get around. I mean, we name the roads different things, and maybe we had some kind of experience on them too to name it, right? So, what's yours?
Well, I got a few, but one of them is kind of special to me because I shot some nice big bucks down there, and Brandon will get a kick out of this because it kind of ties back in with his family. But when I was hunting over in the Cocadjo area years ago, it was the first year I hunted there was no road. There was just an old skid trail down there. And I probably might have talked about this because my dad, when we did the podcast on my father, but I found a place that was just stove up. There was a signpost down in there, but then there was like a rub line going in every direction away from it and just scrapes, and it was tore up. But I was going to bring my father down. I call it the Eagle Mountain Road because Eagle Mountain's right there. And there was no road the first year that I went down there. It was just a skid trail. And I was taking my dad down in there to hunt. We never even made it down in there. I'm walking down this skid trail, and this 245-pound buck with not much sense decided he was going to walk out in front of me. So I shoot this deer, and my father said, I think you can get your vehicle down. At the time, I had a short box Ford. It was in the early 90s. It was a little four-wheel drive, just regular cab with a short box, and I'd put some 33s on it, so it was more like like a Bronco. And my father said, I think you could drive down that skid trail and get down in here. We wouldn't have to drag that deer out. So we did that, got that deer out. The next year, when we came back, there was actually a road there, Cornville Construction, which Brandon married one of the girls from over in Cornville, and her family, the year after I shot that big buck, had put a road down in there. So that's when we started calling it the Eagle Mountain Road. And that's I think as far as I know, it's the only buck that I ever tracked on dry ground. And I had 4 or 5 guys with me, so they could attest to it. But a buck cross that road. The gravel was still soft because they just put that road in. And we had stopped to take a leak. And while we were doing that, this buck crossed the road, and my father and my cousin had seen it. And so we stopped the vehicles, everybody piled out, and I went down and got on that buck's track on the Eagle Mountain Road and tracked him on dry ground. He was so heavy and the ground was soft. It had rained hard the day before and then turned cold that morning. And so, yeah, I tracked it, and he just went in the woods and walked down basically parallel with the road until he got down into a cut. And when I tracked him down, I got down into that cut. So 2 years in a row on the Eagle Mountain Road, I killed 2 really nice bucks right there. So probably nobody else calls it, but that's the Eagle Mountain Road to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how we do that. Same thing. I've got a bunch of them that I call certain things just so I know. But if I would send anybody there, I'd say that's what I call it. Because, like I said, the roads, back years ago, there was like no road signs on any of the roads. And then I think it was shortly after 9/11 is when this all started popping up. They wanted, I don't know if the state did it or whatever, but they wanted to have a better system of knowing what the roads were instead of just like common names that local people called them. And they started putting those green, like you'd see around cities and towns, the standard green road sign on a post. They started putting those up. I think that was about when it was, shortly after 9/11 or whatever. So nowadays you will see in the areas that are more populated, you don't see those in what they call the North Maine Woods Association. I don't think you see many up there, but down in this area you'll see a fair amount of them. It's not every road, but they marked them so most people can kind of know where they are. I don't know if it was because there's more cell service, although in the woods you're not going to get much, but maybe reference points and, thing for 911 emergencies, whatever it is. But those are the ones that they named. When they named them, I guess they asked the foresters what the name was, so they didn't know what they were originally called. They might have been new to the area, so they came up with their own name. Like I just said, what was always called the East Branch Road is now the 200 Road.
We've had some adventures up on that road, you and I both.
Yeah. And then another popular one is it's called the 9502. Scott Paper they numbered all of their roads. So any of the ones that were more common, we kind of remembered them. Probably it was because we liked to hunt there, whether it was moose hunting or whatever. But I remember the 9502. That sign is still there unless it's fallen down, but some of them are kind of gone by. But that was a road that we did a lot of moose hunting on back in the day. And but all of those were in that country, had those different numbers on. I don't know how, there was no rhyme or reason to the numbers either. That's what always puzzled me. You might get down there and there's one is 9502, and you get down to the next kind of main road and it might say 9401. I mean, none of it made any sense the way you could kind of keep track of anything. You had to just know, well, that particular road was that's what it was. And then I know some of them, particularly up north, but not always, they do it here too, is they'll name the main road, and then everything off the main road is 1, 2, 3, 4. Every side road, they numerically number it, the name of the road, and then it's, for an example, up north there's a Budworm Road. Well, it's a Budworm Brook Road, but then when you start up it, every side road is bud. They don't put budworm, just put bud 1, bud 2, bud 3, bud 4, all the way up the road. And that's actually easier because you can kind of keep track of things that way. But, and then that was a road, that's up in zone 4. That was a road that was always the North Branch access road. From way back when I first started going up in there, that it went to Big Bog and it was North Branch access. And then when they built the Budworm Road, it was a shortcut there from the Golden Road to get, you'd go to the Budworm and they connected to the North Branch access. And then sometime after that, everything up that road was a Budworm Road. Like they changed the whole road, name of the whole road system because they made a shortcut to it. So, yeah, kind of interesting the way they do that stuff.
I ended up, again, you wouldn't find it on a map named that, but I was asking because I thought it might have been one of Brandon's bear baits out at the end of it, but he said it wasn't. But I have a road, I named it the 33 Road just because there was a mile marker there. There's no sign or anything, and it's not right on the road, but it's close enough that me and all my guides started calling it the 33 Road because there's a mile marker there. And that one became special to me mostly because I ended up I think it was 2 years in a row. That road system is all changed now. They've gone in there and logged and it's different. But back when I first started hunting it, I had the pig man, Brian Quacker, I had him with me and we'd had a hard week. It was just one of them weeks. It was miserable weather between wind and rain. But I can remember on Friday morning, I got up and it was dead calm and cold. It had dropped right off in the night. It was down in the 30s and dead calm. And I said, you guys are going to see some moose today. And that was long enough ago that we didn't have any problems calling the moose. They'd come right out onto a road that you could drive on. They don't like to do that now. But back then, I didn't have any trouble. We parked my vehicle. I drove up in a ways and then just parked my vehicle beside the road. You can't block roads, but I just parked my vehicle beside the road so people knew I was there. I think at 7 o'clock in the morning, I called out a small bull. We passed on it. At 8 o'clock, I called out another one. It was kind of like clockwork. We passed, I think, on 3 bulls that day. And when we got to the very end of the road, there was a turnaround spot right there. And I had set up a little ground blind for Brian and the other guy, the hunter, the sub-permittee that he brought with him and his camera guy. And I had started calling and those guys were ready. And, I'm expecting to hear a grunt or have some indication. But this bull was one of those, I call him a ghost. He never made a peep. He just came in silent, never made a sound, didn't even know he was there until it all happened like that. I looked around and he's at full draw and he lets one go and drilled a beautiful moose. And we were at the end of the road. So at the end of the road where the bear bait is, there was an old skid trail, but it went down into a swamp and it was kind of a mess down in there. Well, he made a good shot on that bull, but it was with a bow and he must have had his adrenaline up or whatever. And he ran about 1,000 feet. I know because I had 1,000 feet of rope and I ended up being just about out. And because he wanted to get that bull out whole. And I can remember I had Killer Vanilla back then and I had that 12,000 pound winch, in the back of that. But I backed that thing up over stumps and through rocks and every other thing, backed it down until it got so wet. I'm like, I better not go any further because I was starting to sink in a little bit. And I ended up, even though I had, my winch and I'd driven down a little bit, I remember I had supposed to be 1,000 feet. Maybe it was a little short, but I was supposed to have 1,000 feet of rope. I had shivs in the trees going around corners and ran all of my rope out and everything. And I actually was all out. My cable was all out. My rope was all out. And we were a little bit short. And that's back when Sean Howard was guiding for me. And Sean's built about like I am, only taller. But luckily it was downhill and it was wet because he and I had to grab a hold of that moose and drag it a little ways in order to get it to the rope so I could tie it off around his antlers and get out. But then I think it was the next year after we got, that was a Pope and Young. It was the biggest bull killed with a bow that year. The next year, my dad ended up with a permit, and again, he shot a moose in on that road that was, it actually, his antlers had gone the other way. He was a 50-inch bull. I think he might have been like 51 inches, but he was one of those old ones. He didn't have hardly anything left for points, but he was 13 and a half years old and weighed 1,000 pounds. So 2 years in a row, we shot big bulls on the, so I named that the 33 road. So some people might know about who I was talking about, but
I'd have named it Big Bull Road.
Big Bull Road? Nope, I named it the 33 road.
Yeah. A couple of the ones here that go way back is one of them's called the School Bus Road.
I've been there.
And that, there was some years ago, more people camped out here in the woods, you know, back, I remember back in the 90s, I've spoken about it before, but there was people with tents and campers and stuff that would camp back in the woods. And, you know, there was, you know, they probably from the 70s, 80s on through the 90s. And then I don't know if more people got too soft to camp out, but there was more hunters back then too. I do know that. There's a lot more hunters because of that. But some of the people used them old school buses for hunting camps. They'd fix them up and put bunks in them and stuff. And they had one up on this road, and they parked it. It was the end of the road. It kind of drove up a steep, went in probably 2 miles, and it went up a kind of a ridge, a steep scramble, and then that was kind of the end of the road, you know, where they turned around. And there was an old winter road beyond it, but they had parked that thing in there and left it because it still sits right there. There ain't much left of it. There's no windows in it. And it actually looks like a short bus. It's not like a whole full-length bus. It's backed in there in the woods and trees are growing around it. But that was actually named the School Bus Road. I think Steve Coleman put a sign out the end of it. And then ironically, when they made a cutoff road to get to another road system off from it, now they call the whole thing from the beginning, from the main road, they call it the cutoff road. So names change. And if you go out to the east there's back when they logged that whole system over there towards what they call Demo Road and out in that, it's the Moose River Valley, you know, like backside along all that big country out there all the way to Rockwood. There's a road out there, and it's still called that. It's called the Fire Road because there was back then they did have more forest fires than they have now, you know. And they had a forest fire out there, and it burnt quite a bit, not excessively, but so that road that they were on out there is the Fire Road, and it's still called that. And that goes back to even before I started knowing anything about that country, so at least back into the early 90s. It might have been in 70s or 80s when they had the fire. And then like the one up the road from it, like not very far, is like within a mile, is another road called the Yellow Car Road. And that road got named there because back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of Canadian loggers. A lot of them would come down, and a lot of them lived here, but a lot of them would come down for the week and they'd log and then they'd go home on the weekends, and they still do. But the wood was all cut by hand, so it was a lot of people working in the woods. And usually what they do is if their car broke down, that's where it died and got buried. They just left it on the side of the road. And I can't remember what kind of car it is now. It's a 60s car, and it was yellow, and they left it right there in the corner of the road. So it was called the Yellow Car Road, and it still is. That's the name they've kept on that for 40 years probably, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all pretty much the locals, those are names that the locals would know about, them little specific little things, you know.
That's kind of like, I think people, there's no sign there that I know of, but everybody knows they call Reggie's Loop because Reggie cut it, right? So it's
Yeah,
Reggie's Loop.
yeah. It was Reggie's Loop, and what was the other one there that we used to call this? Because Reggie Griffin was a people you wouldn't know if we didn't talk about him, but there was a guy from town here that was a logging contractor, and at one time he owned Reggie and Charlie Lumbert owned the mill in Holub, and then when they cut all that wood and decided to get out of there because they were trucking wood in, Reggie went on his own. That's when he started just contracting. I mean, he worked in the woods and stuff before then, but he got right into just the contracting. And so there's several things named after Reggie around here, but this, off the Addian Road, they built, Reggie had bought 600 acres there and logged pretty much all of it. And then it went up a big steep hill, and that got named, there was always for the airport, there was one of those beacon lights there, so when planes got around Jackman, they could see the beacon light and know where the airport was, but that was always up there. There was a pole line that went up, but that became Griffin Hill. So that was a Griffin Hill, and then the road straight through, when they connected it straight through to the mining road, which is there's another road, we always call that Reggie's Road because it came from Reggie's land and it went through the Plum Creek land, and probably Reggie cut it. I'm not sure if he'd cut all of that, but then yeah, that reminded me, you got the mining road over there, and that got named because they were doing some test mining up on Cathart Mountain and for minerals, and they did that. That was before I moved up, because I remember going up there. Oh, it was open enough where you could ride your snowmobile right to the top of Cathart Mountain, but they went right up to the top, and they were digging and blasting for minerals to see what there was in that mountain. So anyways, they never did any mining there, but they called it the mining road. And ironically, that road basically is only now from what was called the mining road, where it left 201. Once you get down to the corner and start south, it's still called the mining road, but it's not the original mining road. The original mining road now that went through, and it actually went all the way out to Spencer, the Spencer Road. You can't get through there. There's a couple of, at least 2 miles through there, maybe 3, but 2 for sure. That's completely grown in. The bridges are gone. Everything's gone out of there. So then, this is another funny one. I keep thinking of these roads. So the next road up to get in that area is called the School Road. And actually, originally it was named the School Kid Road. Back in the 70s, the high school in town, they had a logging program for the high school kids, because probably half of them were going to be loggers, right?
Right.
So they actually had a program like shop class, but it was about logging. And they must have it was Scott Paper at the time, they must have got permission to do a program down on that road. They built a road in there and probably let the kids practice cutting trees down and the whole thing with logging. So they called it the School Kid Road, and the only thing that stuck is the school road. It's still called the School Road. It's right below the cellular tower. And then that connects to the mining road. And then they built a road over Cathart out to the mining road, the Spencer Road, excuse me. And they call that, from the Spencer Road, if you drive into mile 3, there's a road called the mining road, and it ain't the mining road. It was never was part of the mining road or even called the mining road, but some forester decided to put the green road sign up and call it the mining road.
You know, the funny part about this was I hadn't been in that country, I bet, in 20 years, and I brought some shed clients in there last week. All these places that you're talking about, I was just there last week and hadn't been in there in 20
Yeah.
years, I bet.
Yeah. So the original mining road, they call the one at mile 3 is got the green sign that says mining road, but the mining road came out at mile 5 on what they call Bear Hill. Somebody must have saw a bear there and they called it Bear Hill. And that's where you have the view down at Addian from the Spencer Road. It's right at mile 5. Well, that's where the mining road come out. And that was the only road in that country originally. Came down off 201, went down, went through there, and it was a straight shot, kind of paralleling kind of the river heading south, and it came out at mile 5, and then the other roads were built after that.
I'll tell you how we got in there, and I don't know, I just call it that, but we went in on what I call the Bean Brook Road. That's how we got into that country, because that's all connected in there now, too.
Yeah, the Bean Brook Road, you must have gone, the Bean Brook Road is just the next one south from the school road.
Yeah.
And it's right, goes up in by Bean Brook, and then follows Bean Brook. It's really gets smaller and smaller up there, but it's the snowmobile trail.
Yep.
And it cuts through, and then it picks up the school road. Yeah. There's more of them roads, and when you get thinking about roads, there's more and more and more.
Started, I could see your wheels turning, and then
Yeah.
I always think it's cool because I've talked about it before on podcast or whatever, but I grew up on the Barker Road, which was named after my grandparents, my grandfather and my great-grandfather, but like Reggie, I think it's kind of cool that guy made an impact, and
Yeah.
you know, he employed a lot of people and gave jobs and everything else, and
Yeah.
what he'll be remembered for probably is Reggie's Loop and, Reggie's Road or whatever. Those are all named because he had a part in settling this country.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a big impact around. He was a great guy. He was a guy, he could have 3 pieces of equipment broke down in the woods and he'd be smiling and everything was great. Nothing ever seemed to bother him like that.
I'm trying to think, wasn't he the guy that shot the 500-pound bear up
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, because when Russell, his son Russell Griffin, he had his different hobbies as he grew up, and he grew up right in the woods. He actually grew up in Holden when Reggie and Charlie had the mill in there, and then of course he got into logging at a young age. But he had his different hobbies, and he started out, I think, racing snowmobiles when he was a kid, and that turned into having what do they call the race cars? It's not NASCAR, but the like local racing and
The Legends?
stock car racing.
Stock car, yep.
So he got into stock car racing, and he had a good car, and he raced all them, and then after that, he got out. He decided he wanted to get, for some reason, he wanted red bone hounds, and he wanted to coon hunt with them. I don't know. He must have read it somewhere or whatever he did. I'd have to ask him that sometime why it was the red bones, but might have been because everybody told him that red bones were no good for anything, and so he had to prove them wrong. That could have been the reason, but so he got 3 red bones. He had a male and 2 female red bone hounds. Bought them from some breeder or something, whatever. And he started coon hunting around because there's some coons around town. Not many in the woods, like you wouldn't strike off out in the woods and trying to find a coon track, but he started running coons, and then maybe it was because there weren't enough coons to run, he got interested in running bears. So he got his coon hounds onto bears, and out of them 3, his male coon hound was probably one of the best bear hounds I'd ever seen. And he was just, like it's in any kind of hounds, there's always some that end up, rising to the top. That bear hound's name was Flat Nose because his nose was kind of flat on the top. You could put dogs in there, you go to a bait site or whatever, and put dogs in there and they'd run around trying to work it out, and they'd and they'd run around, and there could be a couple dogs in there for a half an hour trying to straighten that out. They'd come back out to the truck. He'd put them in the truck. He'd let Flat Nose out. He'd go right in there, put his nose down, and go right by the bait through all them other dog tracks. Oh, oh. And first line he'd take, he was right out of there on the bear every time. Never had to fool around hardly at all. But anyways, he got into that. And then so Reggie supported Russell in everything he did. So Reggie'd like to go too. And then he asked me, came to me, and he said, I got these hounds and they're running pretty good. He said, you want to take some bear hunters with hounds? And I go, yeah, I'd do that, Russell. I'd do that for a couple of weeks. And so I would only book like 2 bear hunters a week or something like that, just to be sure. So anyways, we did good. Jesus, dogs were good, and we did good. But anyways, we had that. That was on one of his baits. He got the baits from a couple of the public reserve lots. There's a few lots around here. They're 1,000 acre lots, and they're owned by the state. And he got at least a couple baits on those, few baits. And there was one bait, it was out on the Fish Pond Road, and that's where that bear was. That bear would be at that bait site. Always show up at the same bait. And we ran that bear with clients. I had 2 clients, and we struck that bear, and he would go almost to Ball Mountain, but he wouldn't go up the mountain for some reason. He'd go up past Heel Pond. And actually, one time I took the hunter in, one of the hunters, and he should have shot the bear. It was in under an uprooted maple, and he didn't come with me. I said, come on over here, and bear come out and run off, and he didn't come over. But anyways, that's the bear Reggie shot. We run that bear about 3 times, and it kind of ran a similar pattern. So we weren't hunting that day. I think it was actually moose season maybe when they shot that, because maybe not, maybe it was bear, but I didn't have any hunters. But they went out and hit that bear, and it ran the same kind of a loop and was kind of coming back. And Russell took Reggie in on this road, and ended up, he was in the right place. The dogs were coming. The thing would just walk. The dogs would be behind it. Thing would just walk along. You weren't scared of the dogs. Reggie happened to be there. It stepped right out in the road and he got it. Yeah, it was 5:36, I think it was, or something.
Good one.
Good one, yeah.
Well, maybe that could be Reggie's Bear Road.
Could be. I don't even know what we call that road. I don't know if there isn't actually a name on it. Probably not.
Well, I think we got to wrap her up, Hal.
Yeah. I think maybe we ought to have some lunch, huh?
Sounds good. We got off. It's funny where you can end up. You start talking about trucks, and next thing you know, you're back to a giant bear.
Back to hunt. We're always getting back to hunting or something anyways. But so anyways, I hope that helped answer the question about trucks, things to have, because and just remember, you're going to be, there might not be some help around, but if you carry a inReach or a satellite phone or whatever, and it might be a help to you too. That's probably a handy tool. Now they got the iPhones. I guess they come off the satellites, but don't worry about the electronic shit so much as be worried about knowing how to use your equipment, get out, help somebody else get out, and have a good time in the North Maine woods. So anyway, for anything else, for info, like I said, we got more films and stuff on the YouTube. Make sure you get on there and subscribe. You'll get this podcast, the Looking Through the Eyes of a Maine Guide podcast, and you'll get that on the same subscription. And we got the Adirondacks podcast. You guys interested in the Adirondacks hunting, they'll be talking about that stuff. Sister podcast. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all of that. And support our sponsors. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your support over the years. And till next time, good luck on the trail.